Chapter 7. It would be inappropriate at this point to overlook the sheer magnitude of difference in culture between the samurai of the Maya and the other two factions we've seen thus far. While the knights and Vikings are indeed rather different in many respects, they share many commonalities that would quickly identify in the manner of governance, society, and social interaction. However, the samurai have a vastly different society. It's so alien, in fact, that it's speculated often why the knights and Vikings have not yet formed an alliance to deal with the common enemy, much like the Imperium has done with the Eldar and Tau on certain occasions to deal with Orc or Tyranid incursions. My only theory as to why they do not is the Vikings and knights have more animosity towards each other than they do with the samurai. Also, it should be noted that the samurai have a strict code of non-aggression with the rest of Heathmoor. While the samurai in no way are cowardly people, they recognize they are grossly outnumbered by their neighbors. As foreigners from a long-lost island nation, the samurai are few in number, and every engagement forces them to sacrifice souls that they could be better used to regrow their people. For this reason, the Dawn Emperor ordered his daimyo to swear that they would never be the aggressors in war. Should the knights or Vikings invade the Maya, they would of course fight to defend it, but the samurai would never act with the intention to claim land or attack their neighbors directly. This will be an important piece of information later. Lastly, the stark amount of difference between how samurai conduct themselves is staggering. Were a Jarl to meet another Jarl in Valkenheim, perhaps some words would be exchanged or a formal announcement would be given, but in truth, it is merely two people talking. But for daimyo, regional rules of certain territories in the Maya meeting a formal affair requiring sometimes days of preparation and ritual, it stands to reason that for the samurai, bureaucracy runs slowly for the empire. With all that said, I believe now we have enough context to look into the following account of the meeting between Daimyo Nakano Tomoe of Amaku province and Daimyo Kurito Jubei of Donyoku. This account was written by Nakano's Hatamoto Takashi Kido, an Orochi warrior who had served under Nakano Tomoe for years. From the logs of Takashi Kido, meeting with Donyoku's daimyo.
Donyoku is nothing like Amaku. This was apparent from the moment we set foot on her soil. Amaku is a port town near the waters. The land is moist and good for growing rice, but it is also lacking in fertile soil for other crops. Here in Donyoku there is far more fertile ground than I would have expected. The grains and wheats grow high, and the regular high trees of the Maya that we have all learned to live with do not engulf the light of the sun as they normally would. Standing in the light of day felt almost pleasant for myself, but I had no time to indulge in meager pleasantries of a commoner or a peasant. I had my duty and orders to fulfill. I walked quietly and with calm reservations behind my daimyo, the lord of Amaku, Nakano-sama. My family had served her since the days of my father, and I am duty-bound to continue this legacy. When I was named her Hatamoto, it was the honor of my life.
1. Hatamoto is essentially a close inner circle position. It's a status symbol given only to a samurai whom the daimyo views as being highly trustworthy and worthy to be in their confidence.
An honor I swore to myself I would uphold. Nakano-sama herself wore silk blue kimono robes, and her shoes were tabi sandals. She walked with an elegant stride through the Donyoku castle, gazing about from time to time to admire the beauty of the land around us. Occasionally she would stop in her tracks, causing myself to nearly bump into her. Her short hair was only shoulder length, but nevertheless she kept it styled in a formal wear to keep it off her neck and to look more professional. She was, after all, here to meet another daimyo. I personally knew little about the daimyo of Donyoku, except for who his family was.
Lady Nakano,
a deep and powerful voice boomed behind me, speaking calmly but with urgency.
We can't delay. We've already behind schedule.
The voice came from the Shugoki and a fellow Hatamoto to Nakano, Otomo, a huge and rounded man with a barrel chest and wide shoulders like most Shugoki. He carried a large kanabo club in his hand, and he looked so out of place in his kimono that I often had to keep from looking at him directly to avoid laughing. He was a good man, though, and understood his role as Hatamoto. Not like the young girl walking just beside me, and yet far enough away I could not reach her.
I do not understand the rush. After all, Kurito-sama is quite busy with his own campaign. I'm sure he's very distracted.
The girl spoke up. Takayama Ayu was a Nobushi, and the third Hatamoto to accompany us.
2. Nobushi is a title given to female warriors of the Maya who specialize in combat with a pole arm called a naginata. They are often known for wearing light armor and fighting with fast and precise blows to vulnerable positions. They typically are positioned in villages and towns too far away for the armies to reach in the event of danger. They are the first line of defense for that town.
Nakano-sama simply gazed at the garden and sighed slowly before continuing on her way to meet with Kuroto-sama.
Kuroto Jubei is many things, she muttered, but patient is not one of them. I'm surprised he waited so long to allow us to enter, and I doubt a campaign with the Iron Legion would so readily slow his decision-making. If anything, I expect him to hurriedly bring us in so he will dismiss us. I'm honestly not sure what to expect.
He is doing well against the Legion, I pointed out. Perhaps he is celebrating his victories.
The Legion is not so easily vanquished, Ayu spoke up quickly, with a hint of concern in her voice.
I sneered at her angrily. I knew why she was concerned, and it was not for the sake of our samurai. Easy or not, they will be put to heel. All of them, I challenged.
Not him,
she hissed back like a spoiled child. He is no different than any other war—
Be silent,
Nakano-sama snapped, causing us both to shut our mouths quickly. Your bickering is irritating and it's not helpful.
We're nearly there. Remove your weapons and set them down.
I hesitantly unstrapped my katana as we neared a large sliding door. 2 Orochi guards like myself stood in our way, glaring at us until our weapons were finally set on the ground.
3. Orochi is a term from samurai mythology referring to an 8-headed serpent called Yamata no Orochi. The Orochi warriors are a class of warrior who specialize in katana combat. They are fast, lethal, and wearing balanced armor. They are often deployed as solitary assassins and hitmen, but are fully capable of engaging multiple opponents at once. Takashi Kido is an Orochi himself, and a very exceptional one, I must admit.
I glared right back, not willing to show any submission. Nakano-sama had not brought her weapons with her. Though she was daimyo like Kuroto-sama, she was not allowed to bear weapons in his presence. But neither was he allowed to bear his in hers. When the guards were satisfied, they pulled back the doors and we walked in. The floor changed from tatami to wood in an instant. The hall was enormous and built as if for the sake of lavish ornamentation, rather than for practicality. Images and paintings of great war heroes filled the room, and murals of mighty beasts were all around. Kneeling on his cushion was the daimyo himself. He had dark hair, closely cut and formed into a topknot. He wore ceremonial kimono, typical for meetings like this. His mustache curled in a sneer as Nakano-sama bowed before him respectfully and sat down. All of us repeated the gesture as we sat before her.
Such a pleasantry to have the Daimyo of Amaku in Donyoku.
Kuroto's voice was cold and unwelcoming. Though formal and direct, it lacked any joy.
Your hospitality is much appreciated, Lord Kuroto, Nakano said with a smile, also with nothing short of contempt. Pleasantries aside, we must prepare to embark to the south. The Emperor has ordered our forces to unite and meet this new threat quickly.
The supposed green Oni, Kuroto chuckled. If the Emperor truly puts any stock in these fairy tales, then he clearly is more distressed than I've ever known him.
Nakano clenched her fist but did not rise to the bait. They are more than fairy tales, my lord. They are built on something resembling truth. Even if they are not Oni, several villages and territories have not been heard from, and smoke columns have been seen for miles, in areas that should be safe.
All of this is very intriguing, but none of it is my concern.
It is the Emperor's directive that
The only directive that is taken into account in Donyoku is the directive of Kuroto Jubei.
Kuroto was in a rage, and now he was rising from his seat to stand. Nakano did not move, but I noted that I was not the only one to become very agitated. Kuroto wouldn't dare do something rash like attack another daimyo. Would he?
Note, considering Kuroto Jubei's attitude at the time, he just might have. Kuroto saw no one as his equal. Even the Emperor of the Dawn Empire itself was merely a hindrance to his ideas and ambitions most of the time. So attacking another daimyo would probably be par for the course as far as he was concerned.
As Kuroto spoke, he turned his gaze to the wall to his left, as if the paintings were far more engaging to him than our presence.
I am currently engaged in a vicious campaign against the Iron Legion. The fighting has only grown more fierce, and the Tigers of Donyoku are needed here, not chasing imaginary demons.
4. The Tigers of Donyoku is the nickname for the samurai of Donyoku who serve under Jubei's direct leadership. The 5 Hatamoto under Kuroto Jubei are called the Tiger's Fangs. Was the news of... I quickly shot a dangerous look at Ayu for speaking. She knew better than to say anything while in the daimyo's presence. Besides, her question was a highly inappropriate one anyway.
I will not abandon this campaign. Not for anything. Too much rides on it. If you wish to go chase fantasies in the mire, go yourself. You should be grateful for the opportunity, Tomoe. Amaku will finally have a worthy opponent. One of your own making.
5. Referring to Nakano Tomoe by her given name and not her family name, and without anything used for an honorific, would be considered a high insult. But, to be fair, he insulted her anyway.
I confess that it was very hard not to leap to my feet in anger. But then again, perhaps that's exactly what Kuroto-sama wanted. If any of us acted out rashly in his presence, as his guests, we would be seen as the ones in the wrong, despite what he had said. Kuroto could easily hurt the already weak reputation of Amaku in the eyes of the Empire. Luckily, Ayu and Otomo both were holding back their rage, staying still and keeping their heads down. Nakano sneered at Kuroto, but tried to show a strong front. Now, while you chase your supposed foe, I will return to dealing with a real foe.
With all due respect, Lord Kuroto, the Iron Legion is not your real foe.
Kuroto spun fast at the sound to see a figure step out of the shadows near the back of the room. It was a woman, likely in her mid-20s. She wore a hood over her head, light armor. Strapped to her hip was a short sword and a dagger. However, she wore no shoes, only revealing her bare feet. She stepped out hesitantly and gave a deep bow.
Forgive my rude intrusion.
She spoke with a very thick accent, revealing she was not of this land, though her features and complexion gave that away easily enough. She was certainly of the Ashfeld lands. "Who are you? What is this?" Kuroto cried.
"Please hear me speak, Lord Kuroto Jubei of Donyoku," she cried.
Her manners were excellent, I had to admit, for a foreigner.
"I am not your foe, but I bring you message from my master, Lord Warden William of Oxshire."
I felt stirring behind me, and I knew that Ayu had suddenly risen her head in interest. I shot her another look, which she completely ignored.
"He brings you grave news, and urges you to hear his plea."
"William of Oxshire?" Nakano asked questioningly.
"Was he not a leader in the Iron Legion at one point?" "Once he was, Lady Nakano," the woman replied, "but he brake ties with the Iron Legion, forming new legion of his own, the Noble Legion. But that not relevant to this message. Lord Kuroto, Lady Nakano, the threat of Oni you speak is real. Already have killed many in Valkenheim and destroy village in Ashfeld. They grow in strong and in number. While their nature is not known to us, we proof of their truth and their threat. My master believe that it is need our people set aside dispute for now and join to deal with threat. He wish invite you and fellows to meeting at Citadel near the mountain that burn."
There was a long silence as the young woman finished her speech. Her Japanese was clearly rusty and weak, but the message was clear enough for all of us. Kuroto sneered and then clapped his hands. "Restrain her!" Instantly, 4 Orochi guards stormed into the room. The girl stood no chance as she was unarmed. She tried to flee, tried to go for her weapons, but was grabbed forcefully by both arms and held firm by the warriors. Nakano finally rose to her feet. "What are you doing?" she cried. "What if she's speaking the truth? She trespassed on my home. She intruded on a private conversation. She spoke out of turn, and she dared to ask me to set aside my ambitions and campaigns at the whim of some fool warden I've never heard of. How dare you insult me like this, girl?" Frankly, I saw the logic in Kuroto's point. In truth, she had been rather rude to act as she did, even if she did come with noble intentions.
That said, there was no saving her, though Lady Nakano seemed adamant about helping her. Frankly, I would never understand where she finds her sense of empathy for the dogs beyond our borders.
Release the girl! I will take her and punish her in my own way. I will go to this meeting in your stead. You need not kill her for following her master's orders.
Don't you tell me what to do either, Tomoe, Kuroto snapped. The she-whore of Amaku has no say in my matters or my goals. Had you any vision, you'd see this as a convenient ploy to make me give up on my campaign into Ashfeld's lands. They would see me stop the battle and allow the Iron Legion an easy victory over me as I ran off to fight these fake monsters of the swamp. Suddenly, Nakano went rigid, and her features became very angry.
Into Ashfeld lands? You invaded Ashfeld? You've broken the non-aggression pact?
Perhaps you of Amaku cannot understand it, but here what matters is land and power. I will take land and thereby claim power. I will not be hindered by the ideas of a fool. That was too much, and even I knew it. Before I could stop her, Nakano flew into a rage, rising and rushing towards Kuroto. One of the Orochi who had been holding the peacekeeper ran at her to stop her. I intervened immediately and tackled him to the ground, wrestling his sword away from him, and then throwing it to Nakano. Taking up the sword, she rounded on Kuroto, who was grabbing for his own katana. Nakano did not hesitate, nor did she falter. Though she was a Kensei and trained with a longer blade, she was not unfamiliar with the katana.
6. Kensei, meaning sword saint, is a position of high honor in the samurai's military. They are wielders of a longsword called a nodachi and are considered generals, leaders, and battlefield commanders.
They struck the other's blade viciously, but then deflected, sliding past each other, and rounding again for another assault. And as they went on, Ayu rushed from her own seat to go and aid the peacekeeper. I stayed near Nakano. Without a weapon, I was of no use to her, but I would not let Kuroto gain any foothold in this battle, and I also wouldn't allow him to call for more reinforcements as I ran to bar the doors. Otomo had gone to the front door in which we'd come in to get our weapons back, and to deal with the men outside. This sudden insurrection had not been the outcome I had anticipated, but we were prepared nonetheless. The battle between the two daimyo, both my master and Kuroto-sama, was over in just 4 minutes, with Kuroto suffering a large gash across his shoulder and chest as he fell back holding his wound. I smiled in satisfaction. So many here saw Nakano Tomoe, my master, as a weakling, as a daimyo who never saw the ferocity of combat. But they had no idea how fierce my lady actually was, how long she'd trained and how many she'd overcome to become a Kensei and daimyo of Amaku.
7. Amaku's location makes it a territory without many chances of engagement. Located at the coast of a very large body of water dividing the Maya from Valkenheim, its only real threat is from Valkenheim raids. However, Amaku is almost an out-of-the-way town itself, so even capturing the territory would not yield a real advantage, as the Vikings have little resources to work with, and would not be near a larger settlement to invade. For that reason, Amaku itself sees very little combat, and some of the other daimyo and samurai view Amaku as weak as a result. Of course, this is not true in the slightest, as you should be able to tell now.
Ayu was struggling to apprehend the 4 Orochi guards, so I rushed to her aid, eventually able to push them off her. With her arms free, the peacekeeper was able to draw her own swords and force back the Orochi. Despite her smaller size, she was quite intimidating, for a knight anyway. However, I believe it was not her, but Otomo's return to the room that caused the Orochi to back down. With him back, he now had our weapons. Rearming ourselves, the Orochi guard was simply now outclassed. None of them wanted to stand up to a Nobushi, Shugoki, and angry peacekeeper at the same time. "Go ahead. Spill my blood, Nakano-sama," Kuroto hissed. "Kill me!" Otomo approached her and held out the Nodachi sword to her, the sword she preferred. She took her blade and held it to Kuroto's throat.
"It's not me you've insulted, but the Emperor. I will take you to him, and you will be punished how he sees fit."
"You dishonor me!" Kuroto shouted.
"And you dishonored him. You're a snake without any honor to your name. Let us see if your father will grant you any before he kills you. Otomo-san?"
Otomo walked forward, and with a swift strike from his enormous fist, he knocked Kuroto unconscious, then grabbed his arms to bind them.
"We will take Kuroto from here to see the Emperor. Takashi-san."
I ran forward and bowed quickly. "Yes."
I'm leaving you to clean up this mess. Inform the Tigers of Donyoku of what's happened here and order them to disengage by order of the Emperor himself.
Nakano explained this to me.
Our mission was to engage the Oni, not the Iron Legion. I will return with our forces after our stop at the capital.
As you command.
I bowed again. She then turned her attention to the peacekeeper. What is your name? She spoke slowly and carefully, knowing Japanese is likely not the peacekeeper's native language, despite her apparent limited understanding of it. This peacekeeper dropped her blades quickly and bowed. Forgive me, she said quickly. My name is Hope. I am warrior of Noble Legion. I heard your explanation earlier, Nakano-sama sighed angrily. I want to know more about this meeting. Were you sent to meet with Kuroto-sama? I was asked to meet with highest authority I could find, she answered. I hear you are to fight Oni, thinking it our enemy. I won't speak to you and hope you come to meeting. I see. She glanced back at me and smiled. Your thoughts?
She is our enemy, just as the Oni are, I responded curtly. Trust her at your own peril, my lady.
She's at our mercy, Takashi-san, Nakano chuckled. I doubt she has a reason to lie. But perhaps you're right. Rushing off to meet with this night warden at the say of some stranger goes against what the Emperor told us in the first place. So perhaps we should take her to see the Emperor himself.
A foreigner to see the Emperor? Otomo gasped. You remember what happened last time that happened, don't you?
We'll keep her bound. Ayu-san, see to her injuries and needs. Have her dressed and prepared to travel, Nakano-sama ordered. Yes, Lady Nakano.
Ayu then took the peacekeeper by the arm and led her away, and I swore I overheard her ask the peacekeeper something about the night warden, which didn't surprise me in the slightest. I myself left at that moment to go and do as I had been instructed.
And on that note, we'll leave Takashi's record there, for there's far more to discuss as Nakano Tomoe takes Hope to the Emperor of the Dawn Empire.